What makes a hero? Is it the capes and the headlines? We often think of heroes as larger-than-life figures, people whose names everyone knows. But what if some of the greatest acts of courage happened in the shadows? What if the most impactful lives were lived by people whose names we've never heard? History is full of these hidden giants, individuals who faced impossible odds, people who chose bravery when others chose silence. Their stories are not always found in the main chapters of our textbooks. These are the unexpected heroes. They were ordinary people, a social worker, a teenage girl, a musician turned spy, an enslaved man. Their power came from a deep well of conviction. They saw injustice and they acted. They faced down Goliaths with nothing but their wits and their will, and in doing so, they changed the course of lives and sometimes the course of history itself. This essay is about bringing some of these forgotten heroes into the light. We will explore the lives of 4 such individuals. Prepare to meet the heroes you never knew you had. Imagine a city gripped by terror. Warsaw, Poland, during World War II. The year is 1940. The Nazis have herded nearly 500,000 Jewish people into a tiny, walled-off area. This was the Warsaw Ghetto. Disease was rampant. Starvation was a daily reality. Yet even in this heart of darkness, a small light flickered. That light was a Polish Catholic social worker named Irina Sendler. She worked for Warsaw's social welfare department. This position gave her a precious permit to enter the ghetto. Officially, she was there to inspect sanitary conditions. But Irina had a secret. She could not stand by and watch the suffering. She knew she had to do something more, something truly radical. She was young in her late 20s, but she possessed a will of iron. Her father, a doctor who died treating typhus patients, had taught her to help those in need. So Irina Sendler began to build a network, a secret conspiracy of kindness. She started by helping smuggle medicine and food into the ghetto. But soon she realized that this was not enough. The Nazis were beginning to deport people to death camps. The children. What about the children? This question haunted Irina. Smuggling them out of the heavily guarded ghetto was fraught with peril, yet the alternative, doing nothing, was unthinkable to her. Irina Sendler, known by her codename Jolanta, did not work alone. She recruited a team of about 24 trusted colleagues. They used every ingenious method they could devise to rescue Jewish children. Some children were sedated and carried out in potato sacks or coffins. Others were smuggled through the old city sewers, a terrifying journey through filth and darkness. Some were hidden in ambulances, sometimes disguised as typhus patients. Some children were even taught Christian prayers and given new identities, then walked out in broad daylight through checkpoints, relying on forged papers and incredible bravery. Each rescue was a masterpiece of courage and deception. Irina and her network placed these children with Polish families in convents or in orphanages outside the ghetto. The risk was constant. Neighbors could be informants. A child's cry at the wrong moment could mean disaster. Yet they persisted. Irina meticulously kept records of each child's original name and their new adopted name. She wrote these names on thin strips of paper. Irina buried the lists in glass jars under an apple tree in a friend's garden. Her work was relentless. It is estimated that Irina Sendler and her network saved around 2,500 Jewish children. Her bravery, however, did not go unnoticed by the Gestapo. Now let us travel across the Atlantic, to a different war, a different kind of struggle, the American Revolution. We all know the story of Paul Revere's ride, but have you heard of Sybil Ludington? Probably not. Yet, on a dark, stormy night in April 1777, this 16-year-old girl rode farther, through more dangerous territory, and arguably with greater impact than Revere. Sybil was the daughter of Colonel Henry Ludington. He was the commander of a volunteer militia regiment in Dutchess County, New York. On the night of April 26, 1777, an exhausted messenger arrived at the Ludington home. He brought dire news. The British, under General Tryon, had landed at Campo Beach. They had marched inland and were attacking Danbury, Connecticut. Danbury was a key supply depot for the Continental Army. Colonel Ludington's men were scattered across the countryside, on their farms, miles apart. They needed to be mustered immediately. The messenger was too tired to ride further. Colonel Ludington needed to stay and organize the men as they arrived. Who could make the dangerous ride to summon the troops? It was a journey of some 40 miles. Sybil Ludington, just 16, volunteered. Let us return to the crucible of World War II, but this time to Great Britain and occupied France. Here we find another unlikely hero, a woman of gentle spirit, a writer of children's stories, a musician. Her name was Noor Inayat Khan. She was a direct descendant of Indian Muslim royalty, a princess. She was also a Sufi, a believer in nonviolence. How does such a person become a secret agent, operating in the deadliest of environments? It is a story of profound conviction overcoming personal inclination. Noor was born in Moscow to an Indian father and an American mother. She grew up in Paris, immersed in music and poetry. When France fell to the Nazis in 1940, her family fled to England. Noor could have chosen a quiet life. She could have focused on her art, but the brutality of the Nazi regime horrified her. Despite her pacifist beliefs, she felt compelled to act. She and her brother decided they had to contribute to the fight against fascism. She joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, training as a wireless operator. Her skills with Morse code were exceptional. This, combined with her fluency in French, brought her to the attention of a very secret organization, the Special Operations Executive, or SOE. Noor arrived in Paris to a disastrous situation. The SOE network she was meant to join, known as Prosper, was collapsing. Mass arrests were underway by the Gestapo. Within days of her arrival, most of her contacts were captured. Her superiors in London urged her to return. It was too dangerous, they said. But Noor made a courageous and ultimately fatal decision. She knew that without a radio operator, the remaining resistance fighters in Paris would be cut off. She was their only link to London. So she chose to stay. For months, Noor was a ghost in Paris. She moved constantly, from one safe house to another, always one step ahead of the Gestapo. She changed her appearance, her hair color. She carried her heavy wireless transmitter, her musical instrument as she called it, in a suitcase. Alone, hunted, she did the work of 6 radio operators. She transmitted messages about German troop movements, V-2 rocket sites, and resistance activities. Her information was invaluable to the Allied war effort. She became the most important and most wanted British agent in Paris. Her resilience was astonishing. Our final story takes us back to the American Revolution, to Virginia, and to a man whose contribution to American independence was immense, yet for a long time, largely unacknowledged. His name was James. He was an enslaved African American. He had no last name, as was common for enslaved people. He was the property of William Armistead. But James possessed something that no chains could bind, a sharp mind and a yearning for freedom. And he saw, in the chaos of war, a potential path to that freedom. In 1781, the Revolutionary War was at a critical juncture. The British, under General Cornwallis, were campaigning in Virginia. The Continental Army, led by General George Washington, and supported by French allies under the Marquis de Lafayette, desperately needed reliable intelligence. They needed to know Cornwallis's plans, his troop strength, his movements. This is where James stepped onto the stage of history. He made a bold decision. He volunteered to spy for the American cause. He approached the Marquis de Lafayette, offering his services. Lafayette recognized the potential. James, as an enslaved man, could move more freely between the lines. He could pose as a runaway slave seeking refuge with the British, or as a forager. Who would suspect an enslaved man of being a sophisticated intelligence operative? James Armistead's espionage was not just a collection of random facts. It was crucial, strategic intelligence. He provided Lafayette with detailed information about British plans, troop numbers, and defensive positions. One of his most vital pieces of intelligence concerned Cornwallis's move to Yorktown. He learned that Cornwallis was fortifying Yorktown and waiting for naval support. This information was relayed to General Washington. It allowed Washington and the French commander, Rochambeau, to devise a plan to trap Cornwallis. The combined American and French forces marched south. The French fleet blockaded Chesapeake Bay, cutting off any British naval rescue or escape. Cornwallis was surrounded. The siege of Yorktown began. James Armistead continued to provide intelligence from inside the British camp right up until the siege. He even managed to get information out to Lafayette about the British weaknesses. Irena Sendler, Sybil Ludington, Noor Inayat Khan, James Armistead Lafayette, 4 names, 4 lives, 4 stories of breathtaking courage. They were not the heroes we typically read about. They did not seek fame or rewards. They saw a wrong and chose to act. They faced oppression with determination and an unwavering moral compass. They shaped history in ways big and small. They teach us that courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it. One person can make an immense difference. Irina defied a murderous regime, Sybil rallied an army. Noor became a formidable spy, James outwitted an empire. Their power came from within. Their stories were hidden for too long, but their light endures. It endures in the lives they touched. It is our job to ensure their light shines brightly for future generations.